I believe I can be all I dream. The connection to destiny is me.
Hey everybody, it's Ty Inspire, and I'm here to encourage you to live a life that's inspired by purpose and love, as usual. Before we start today's topic, I want to ask you, if you have not subscribed yet, to please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell button so that you get all of the notifications. And if you find that you like this video, by the end of the video, please give it a thumbs up. All right, I'm here today with my best friend, Nicole. And today we're going to talk about a subject that is maybe a little hard to talk about, but we want to, not yet. We kind of want to shine some light on this topic because it's very real for those of us, especially those of us who live in America right now. And we know that there has been a lot of violence, and especially a lot of violence on the African Americans in America. So Nicole has 3 boys that she is raising, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her boys, or just about raising her boys, and how it feels to raise black boys in America these days, and what types of things go through your mind as a mother when you're dealing with everything that's happening in the society here. So first of all, tell us about your boys, like their ages and, maybe what they're doing in school.
Okay, so I have three boys, 15, 14, and 7. 2 high schoolers, 1 in the 2nd grade. And they're just really great, active boys, very respectful kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Good kids.
They're great kids. They really are. So with everything that's going on, in America these days, it started, I don't know, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, that wasn't the start of it. Let me change that. I mean, that's kind of when some light was really being shone on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, for years, we have been dealing with having issues as African Americans with the police and other things that have been going on. So now that there has been so much light shone on it, how do you feel every day when you send your boys to school?
I think it's definitely a fear that you try not to recognize. You try not to not recognize, acknowledge. Every day you just kind of pray. I pray over my son's safety as they go to school, and hope for the best for them when they can get home and go home safely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when you hear about things that happen in the media, how does it make you feel?
I think it's scary. I'm not going to lie. It's scary to think about what could potentially happen to either my sons, either their friends, just happen even if it's like around the corner. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have happened, school shootings and whatnot here in Kentucky in itself. And then you're also looking at what else is going to happen. You're always kind of holding your breath and hoping that it's not going to be something about an African-American boy, or if it's not going to be something about somebody else that you're not clear on. So it's just definitely a constant worry and concern that I have, say, on a regular basis.
Right. I can only imagine that that has to be scary to think, what's going to happen today, and could it be mine?
Right, right.
Very scary. So what type of conversations do you have with your boys?
Gosh, I have a lot of conversations with them. It's unfortunately they can't. I always talk to them about how they behave, who they hang out with, some things that they specifically will do when they're out. Being mindful of how they present themselves when it comes to police, when it comes to really anybody who could possibly call the police, because they're just being kids. So they have to have almost like a different mindset than probably most of their their peers and their counterparts. They have to be very mindful when they go to the mall, behaving correctly, when they're literally just walking down the street. I always tell them we have a basketball court that's around the corner, so I'm always mindful of, this is how you need to walk, this is what you need to do, don't look like you're threatening, because that's always a concern, because somebody might think they're threatening, call the police, or some people might just think of, a lot of different things that could happen to them. So I definitely have coached them. They're not at driving age yet, but my oldest is about to be at driving age. So we've already had those conversations with him on what to happen if you get pulled over, what to happen if you're in a car with friends that get pulled over and you're the only African American in the car, how to behave and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that's good. Those good conversations to have with them. I know they must be tough, but it's definitely something that you have to do.
Definitely.
Now, we both went to college here. You grew up here in Kentucky. I went to school in Kentucky, in Frankfort. And, I've had my own experiences here as a black woman. So what is the climate like for you living here with your boys in Kentucky? Because the demographics here between African Americans and Caucasians is different. It's quite unbalanced, I will say that. And I think the mentality of Caucasians in this area, not of all of them, of course, it's never everybody,
right?
But of some people, and maybe older people, is not so great. So what do you think the climate is as it relates to this type of situation, as far as your boys and the police, and how do you feel that activity is, or that climate is?
Well, I think that it kind of depends on, again, your environment, who you're encountering. I mean, my older two go to a private school, which is predominantly Caucasian, white Americans. And so, thankfully, they've had positive experiences there that we're aware of. No type of maybe direct racism, so to speak. Discrimination. I think there's been things that have been said that maybe my sons did not realize or understand, but when they might speak to their father or myself about it, then we, if there's a concern, that we'll go to the administrators. I mean, I think there was a young kid that called one of my sons, the N-word, or playing like, they're not talking directly to him, but kind of saying it because it's in the music that they listen to. And so we had to definitely have conversations with the administration. And I think one of the key things is right before they went to that school, the principal of the school at that time said, a lot of these kids have not been exposed to African Americans. So we were already kind of heightened on kind of things to expect, and explain to the boys these are things that are acceptable and not acceptable for them to be around. So we definitely had a lot of conversations surrounding that. And so we were very vigilant and paying real close attention when it came to them going to the school, like what was going to be said. And so it was constantly conversations with them on, again, what was acceptable and what was not acceptable.
Right. Wow. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
It's not easy here. It's definitely not easy. It's not the worst. But, and I mean, when I say here, I'm not just talking about Kentucky. I'm talking about in America, period, for Black Americans. Okay, so now I want to kind of switch it up a little bit and talk about your family, because your family is not originally from America.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about that. So tell us about your family and your growing up, and where you grew up, where were you born, and all that stuff.
Okay, so both of my parents are from Guyana, South America. They were specifically from a town called Georgetown, and I have to say I don't know tons about it. They talked about it a little bit as I was growing up. Probably as I got older, I learned a little bit more, and plan to visit very soon. So, so my family has a strong accent. And so myself and my siblings, my brother and my sister, we all grew up in the United States, in America. So it's been a good experience for us, but we've also been reminded by our parents, that we are descendants of, South America, Guyana, South America. So we've always took that into consideration, and it was kind of like a pride thing for us. A lot of when we grew up, there wasn't, common. Majority of our friends didn't have parents that came from a different country. I would say growing up, for the most part, that my parents speak English, a strong accent again, but just they do speak English. I'd probably say the big difference between my friends growing up and from when I was growing up, when I was smaller, it was just probably maybe some of the food that we ate. We would make, like my parents would make what we call like chow mein, which is similar to Chinese food. They'd make plantain, some stuff called black pudding, curry. So different ethnic foods that we ate that might have been different from a lot of the American food that my friends would have. But it was really good. I think when we were growing up, my parents were very protective. So, if things happened to us when we were younger that we may not have recognized, maybe because of our parents, they kind of sheltered us from it. So we didn't really recognize much. But it was a good experience growing up. So. Okay.
So growing up, you grew up here in Kentucky, right?
Yes, I grew up here in Kentucky.
Yeah. And so how would you describe that experience and how it was for you growing up in Kentucky then opposed to how it is growing up in Kentucky, or how you think it is growing up for your kids now? How is it different?
I definitely think there's a big difference. I think there's a lot more outward, I think in the climate that we are now, kind of racism or people feeling that it's okay to say specific things. When we were younger, it wasn't so much of that's something that people were doing. You didn't necessarily hear the N-word a lot. You didn't hear people coming right out being prejudiced. You would see it in small pockets, and I think, again, I feel like I was sheltered for maybe some of it. It's just we didn't experience a lot of it. When now with my kids, they hear a lot more about and experience prejudice and get called the N-word and kind of have to deal with a lot of different things. So it's definitely been a strong piece for us when we've been talking about this. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, of course, times are way different now than they were, when we were growing up. So in general, and like I kind of mentioned before, I'm not just, singling out Kentucky. That's where we are. That's where she's from. So we're talking about Kentucky today, but I'm sure everybody is aware in the world that this is a huge problem for our whole country.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what we can do about it. It seems like all of our efforts are falling on deaf ears, or our solutions are not really materializing. Like, it's just not working, anything that we're trying.
Or people not quite understanding, because a lot of times you hear, well, slavery that's old and that's over, or there really isn't a lot of racism. And I just think that racism has taken different forms at this point. It's not necessarily direct calling names, but maybe referencing certain things that people are realizing that is actually a racial word, or that is racial undertones. And that's, I think, what we're experiencing a lot more now than we probably did before. Right. And just ridiculous.
More outspoken.
Yes.
Now. It's more out in the open now. So yeah, I think it definitely existed.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's I guess, I don't know, to wrap it up, what would you say, to kind of wrap it up as far as, being a mom, how it feels, and you kind of talked about how it feels, but what do you think the solution is for you, and how will you move forward with your boys? Now they're getting older now, so soon they will be college age, and they'll be kind of moving on. How will you move forward, like even tomorrow or the next day, with your boys?
I just think the education is the biggest key. Continuing to educate them, continuing to let them know what's okay and what's not okay. Praying over them for sure. Just constant prayer on making sure that they can make the right decisions, or the people that they encounter on a daily basis aren't, kind of out to get them. Yeah. There's not a lot you can do to kind of shield them from it. It's just kind of being educated and knowing how to handle certain situations. Yeah. And on another real quick note, what I want to say also is Kentucky, where I live in Lexington, the Frankfort, Louisville region, you don't see it's probably not as prevalent as you might see in different parts of Kentucky.
Yes.
So if you, and I don't want to single out Eastern Kentucky like that's the only place that a lot of it happens, but you will probably see a little bit more in Eastern Kentucky on that border of more of the probably racial undertones. And it could, could be for a variety of different reasons. There weren't a lot of diversity. And again, it's not specific, or want to say it's not specifically African Americans. It could be anyone of a different racial background in that particular area. So in these areas, there's probably a little bit more of a mixture of a lot of different cultures and a lot of different people.
Yeah, I will agree that, like, even when we were in school, we didn't encounter a lot of problems.
Right.
But I have had some problems while traveling through the state. So not necessarily in Lexington or Frankfort or Louisville, like she said, but, around, other cities in the state.
Right.
Definitely. I've had some pretty direct issues. So I just think the best thing is, like Nikki was saying, just educating, our boys, and even women too.
Mm-hmm.
I have been racially profiled. I have experienced being pulled over by the police, and it not being a very pleasant experience. Of course, when it happened to me, it was many years ago when I was in college, but I was in Milwaukee, where I'm from. But nothing bad happened,
thankfully.
But yeah, so I've experienced it too as a woman. So it's not just
the
boys,
males,
right? It's not, but it's everybody
Mm-hmm.
now. So we just need to be educated. We need to love on each other as much as possible.
Yes.
My thing is love, because my God, I think if we had more love, we would just be in a better place. But loving on each other.
Yeah, and educating, and I just want to start to go back, educating not only our own community, but educating people outside of the community, because that's where it lies a lot of the issues and the problems, is those that are outside of the African American race who don't understand. So educate, if you've got friends, like, educate your friends that are not of the same race, regardless if you're not even African American, and if you're a Caucasian person and it's a Native American, everyone needs to be aware and vigilant of it, because it can happen to anyone.
Exactly. Knowing the steps that you should take, making sure that you're following directions, and that you're compliant as possible.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. That's all you can do. I mean, sure, it can happen. It's happened to several people that have been compliant, but that's all you can do is try to be. So, just be careful out there, guys.
Definitely be careful.
And let's raise awareness in every way that we can. I said before, like, I'm not sure exactly what we can do, but let's try to do whatever we can, because we can't give up. That's for sure. We can't just stop.
We'll not give up.
But we have to keep fighting for our rights, fighting for each other, and doing the best that we can do. So
Definitely.
thank you for joining us today.
No problem.
So happy that we could chat about this, and I hope this helps somebody. Until next time, see you later.
Later.
Now I believe